Look at those beauties on this dead hemlock. What are we looking at there? I think I know. You're into medicinal mushrooms. This is called jackpot in a couple months. There's a lot of reasons to get out in the woods. I mean, just getting out and going for a hike is one. But of course, people have rediscovered mycology. A lot of people are getting into hunting mushrooms. People are out looking for artifacts with metal detectors. There's always been hunters and fishermen meandering through.
Now, my uncle used to tell us when we were kids that you couldn't have an adventure just sitting on your butt on the couch, so get outside. And I've always told the kids in my own history classes that very thing. Although there was a woman that was sitting on her couch down in Alabama in the 50s and she got hit by a meteorite, the odds are not good, so don't expect it. Get outside. Now, what I'm going to do today in our video is I'm going to show you some of the ways that you can find cellar holes and wells and the remains of old human habitation out in the Northeast forests. Because it's not just about rambling around. Although if you ramble around, you will bump into things. Hopefully not a well, because if you bump into a well, you could end up like the Looney Tunes cartoons. That's not something you want. There are some definite strategies you can use if you want to get out and find human artifacts in the Northeast forest. All over the Northeast, we have been blessed by our forefathers, if you will, with outrageous and extensive amount of state forests and state parks, wildlife management areas, and watershed territories. All of these can be hiked and explored. I mean, the watershed territories, you might get in trouble, but you know what? Just say you're sorry, don't ask permission. So get out and find one near you and enjoy the video.
Hike around in the forest of southern New England as a whole, the Northeast too, you're going to find these kind of things just littered everywhere you go. And they're going to be, in some cases, places where you say, why would anyone build a stone wall there? What's the deal? Like, how are they going to grow crops on the side of this hill? As I walk here, I'm walking on what is either a farm road or a logging road, or a little bit of both. Of course, there's evidence of farms all over southern New England, all over New England, all over the Northeast. Farms that are now abandoned. There's a lot of reasons they got abandoned. Ooh. Look at this. Somebody's been here. I believe I've got an old cellar hole right up here, and I can tell. I've got a flat spot here. I've got grapes. I've got a really big sugar maple. So let's see. You can also see that deer or turkeys or bear have been dancing around here recently. Look at this. Digging up, looking for acorns. Interesting. There's our stone wall right there. And no, there's not a visible cellar hole up here. There's another sugar maple. So we're in the area. And it may be that the house was built here without a cellar, which was very rare, so I wouldn't bank on it. But it could also have been a barn. Of course, we would find the footings of the barn if we looked. Now, sometimes out here in the wilderness, if you want to call it wilderness, it's not really wilderness, regrown fields of southern New England. Out here, there's been a lot of activity, human activity. Free forest clearances, of course. So, lots of logging, regrowth, logging, pasturage. Look at our stone wall extending along. So in March, you can really see into the woods. It's a good time to walk around and get the lay of the land. And we can see an old farm road here, maybe a logging road, or a wagon road heading off to the north. A sugar maple. And you can see how the woods that I'm standing in here is clearly regrowing, a former field. Most of the trees, not all, but most of the trees are under 100 years old. unless they happen to be one of those big sugar maples that had value for the people who made their home on the side of this hill. Below me, you can see last year's rutting circles where bucks marked their territories and tried to attract does by laying down a little bit of scent. You'll find quite a few of these in March. Here's another big one right here. You can actually see that he's been visiting not that long ago. You can see the tracks. We're in a good area, what you might call a home range. Look right here, you can see piles of deer droppings. And I think we're getting close to the former cellar hole. I think it's, well, the former farm. I think it's right up here. And again, I can see a flat spot. Lots and lots of grapevines, which are an invasive species. Check out the stone wall coming up from down below. And another stone wall coming up and angling off. So let's investigate up here and see if we've got what I think we've got. Look at that. You see it coming up? Oh, and there it is. Do you see it? Those rocks covered with moss is very cool. And I'm just stumbling around. I'm in an area of woods that I haven't explored. Oh yeah. Beautiful. Might be older. Look at the hearth, or the old fireplace chimney, set in the cellar, and we're looking at a cellar hole here. So the home would have had its first floor about here, and then the hearth would have been up above. Well, it might not have been that way. It might have been just a crawl space, so the floor would have been down another couple feet. It's all about trying to interpret it. But look at this. There was no mortar used, which is why I'm saying this might have been older. So look at this beautifully preserved hearth behind me, as well as the, what would be, northwestern wall of the home. This is just outstanding. Think about what you go through when you have to mow the lawn on a hot summer day. Oh no. Or do any housework. Imagine this. Imagine the family having to dig out this cellar hole, build this dry stone wall. It wasn't like they did subcontracting. They dug it themselves and they made it themselves. And they obviously had a little bit of skill because it's holding up quite well. But this hearth, imagine being witness to birthdays and family celebrations and Christmases. You could use it right now if you wanted to make a fire in it, but I feel like that would be almost disrespectful. You can see it extends all the way out to right about here. The flagstones that would have protected the home from burning. Really cool. And I can imagine that right here, there's the door where you can see that big flagstone. And people would step into the home, and the floor would have been about even with that door and with the hearth right here. So this is a really well preserved cellar hole, probably because it's on the side of a hill, and while of course the weight of the soil sliding down has caused this wall to fall, the rest of it is doing pretty well as the rainwaters just run right through it and out the other side. And look at this old farm road extending on up the hill there. Of course, we're surrounded by beautiful grapes that the farmer would have brought in. So a home like this would probably have been established at the end of the colonial period. So this might date back to the 1780s, 1790s. I mean, it's dry stone construction. There's no hints of mortar in it. It could extend as far up into, it could extend into the 1820s and 30s because they were still building homes like this then. But I feel like it's a colonial era home. Home would have been built up here if it's 1780s, 1790s, at the end of the first great cutting or clearing of New England forests. And that first great clearing was very pragmatic. It was done for lumber and firewood for that hearth right there. That's what people had to burn to stay warm in the long New England winters. So as the forest regrew from the field and forest state that the colonists had found when they met the native people here in the 1630s, when they're cut that first time, it's for pragmatic purposes. You were coming upon the cellar hole that we were just looking at from this direction. You can see that we wouldn't see it at all. We're below it, but we can see that there's a flat spot there. And that flat spot is also an indicator, as are sugar maples, as are grapevines, and as are apple trees. So I'm stumbling along, looking for more. I'm being greedy. Don't be surprised if you are in this type of forested environment and you find a cellar hole like this. Don't be surprised if you should happen to stumble into a family cemetery. Now this little stone wall here could be an indicator for that, but I think it's more likely that this is where they slop the pigs. You know, this is where the swine were kept, and I can see some footings right here, probably for an old barn. Yep, right here. Here, here, there, and there. We would have had an old barn. But look at that beautiful sugar maple right there. As I told you, great indicators. No more. That's one right there. There's some birch, and they would tap birch to make birch beer, right? You ever had birch beer? Try some birch beer if you haven't had it. It tastes like wintergreen. Oh, yeah. And this is just something else, this area. But it's really fairly recently regrown based on the age of the trees. The deer love it. I'm seeing deer sign all over the place. And, oh, look at, now is this a bear or a deer? A bear or a deer or a turkey coming through here and ripping this up? We can tell by taking a quick look at the tracks, and we can see deer tracks. So it's like a hungry doe was stumbling around out here, doing her thing. Well, I'm stumbling. She wasn't stumbling. She knew exactly what she was doing. She found something good there. Maybe she found some deer truffles, because this is a good area to find deer truffles. I see there's a lot of moss on the ground, and I'll bet she grabbed some deer truffles, which I guess you can eat, but I wouldn't eat one. I've heard that some people have a problem with them. An innocuous maple tree. Also ubiquitous because we find them all over. But if we look up, you can see a beautiful example of a burrow right there. That could be made into quite a few things if you were into the wood carving and lathing.